Good morning and welcome to this Environment and Economy Scrutiny Committee meeting. I am Councillor Ian Carrington. I'm the Chairman of the committee. Councillor Martin Griggs, Vice Chairman of the committee, is also in attendance, as are various other officers and members, and we will introduce those as we come to them. May I remind you that the audio-visual feed for this formal public meeting is being broadcast live via the County Council's website, and with this in mind, I would like to welcome members of the public and press watching this live, or indeed watching one of the recordings. We don't have any fire drill planned this morning, so in the event of the fire alarm sounding, we will need to leave the council chamber through the rear doors, that's the ones at that end of the building, and gather in the front car park beyond reception. We then need to wait in the car park until further instructions are issued. And may I remind everybody, including myself, what I had already forgotten, to ensure that your mobiles, laptops, iPads and other devices are on silent for the duration of the meeting, and the hearing loop, for those who need it, is now activated. Request to speak will be collated by the Vice Chairman, and we will now move to the formal agenda. So let's begin with item 1, apologies for absence and replacement members. Jess.
Thank you, Chairman. So today we have Councillor Skinner as a replacement for Councillor Fleetwood. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Next, item 2, declarations of members' interests. Do any members wish to declare any interest that has not been declared previously in their pecuniary interest forms? Looking around the room, I'm seeing no hands raised. I would just remind you, if an interest does become evident in the course of the meeting, please notify the chair at that time. Moving to item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of April 2023. This item is to approve and sign the minutes of the last meeting as a correct record. Please turn to pages 5 to 12 of the agenda pack, and we'll take those on block. Do I have a proposer? Vice Chairman, thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Taylor, thank you very much indeed. We will now vote. All those in favour? And any against? Any abstentions? And that is clearly carried. Thank you very much. Chairman's... I beg your pardon, my apologies. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chairman. At the bottom of page 9, I asked how much the commissioned work from the RLB about the Energy for Growth report cost, and was told that the detail would be circulated. Has that detail been circulated?
I'll check that with officers. I know that you're aware of it because you raised the matter in the County Council full meeting. Jess, we have not yet received that. It will be circulated to members at such time as we do receive it, and I'm sure officers are noting the fact that we have not yet received it. Does that answer your question, Councillor Baxter?
Well, frankly, I'm surprised as the information is available on the public website. I'll circulate it myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, moving on to Chairman's announcements, which are very brief this morning. We have a short agenda today, which allows us to delve into the topics on the agenda in great detail. Nevertheless, I would ask, as I always do, that those presenting reports summarise key points, and could I remind all members of the importance of succinct questions and concise contributions. I'd also wish to remind members that we are engaging with officers to arrange a visit to the South Food Enterprise Zone, and our scrutiny officer will be in touch with you in due course for further details. And I would encourage all members to make sure that we can find an acceptable date. Food, as we are going to be discovering with one of our agenda items, is a key matter in the economy and indeed the environment of this county, and I think this is a very, very important site visit indeed. Right, moving on to Executive Councillor announcements. Do we have any announcements from Councillor Colin Davey, Executive Councillor for Economic Development, Environment and Planning, or supporting Councillor Tom Dyer? Councillor Dyer is with us in the chamber. Is Councillor Davey online? No, he's not. No. It's Councillor Dyer.
Just
Good
me.
Morning, Councillor.
Just me, Chairman. And it'll be very, very brief. And it's just to remind members, on the 23rd of May, Councillor Davey emailed all members regarding the public rights of way improvement plans as part of the development fund, and that essentially is to ask members to have a walk around the public rights of way in their division and put forward some suggestions. And there's more detail within the email. I think as of this morning, I've spoken with Chris Miller, and not many suggestions have been returned to the countryside team. I know I've done 10 or so across my patch. I just encourage members before the deadline of the 9th of June to go out and have a walk in your divisions and put forward some suggestions so that we can get that money spent. That's it from me, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, and I would certainly second you there. The importance of public rights of way and keeping existing public rights of way open and in a good condition is immensely important, not just in the rural parts of our county, but throughout its area. Turning to senior officers, do we have any announcements by senior officers? I'm seeing an encouraging number of shaking heads, so we will take that as being no. So we can now move on to the next item, which is one of the two large items on our agenda today. Item 5, Scrutiny Panel B, Agriculture Sector Support in Lincolnshire Scrutiny Review. And this report is on pages 13 to 236 of the agenda pack. The report summarises the findings of Scrutiny Panel B and presents with recommendations that are summarised on pages 17 to 20 of the report. The report will be presented by a number of people, and it will be today. It will go to the executive for decision on this matter on June the 6th. And the action before us, the committee is invited to consider and comment on the report and determine whether we support the recommendations to the executive as set out in the report. We are also asked to agree that our comments be passed on to the executive ahead of their consideration and decision on the 6th of June. We will have a number of presenters for the report. To begin with, our scrutiny officer, Chiara Hagianu, will introduce the work to us. We will then hear from the chairman of Scrutiny Panel B, Councillor Gary Taylor, supported by Councillor Mike Clark. We also have with us leading officers Justin Brown, the Assistant Director of Place, Vanessa Strange, Head of Infrastructure Investment, and they may wish to comment, and they will certainly be available to help with questions. So we'll take those questions after the report briefing, so hold your questions until then. And Chiara, I think we're going to start with you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to all. In February 2021, this committee identified support to farmers as a potential topic for a scrutiny review in recognising the unprecedented change in the sector that was being experienced and was about to be faced with for the foreseeable future. The committee established a working group, which then met in March 2021 to identify key lines of inquiry for a scrutiny review. Following the completion of its remit, the working group came back to the committee, and the committee was satisfied that a topic ought to be recommended for a thorough investigation by one of the scrutiny review panels. In September 2021, the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board considered and approved the allocation of this review topic to Scrutiny Panel B. The panel consisted of Councillors Gary Taylor, Chairman of the Scrutiny Review Group, Councillor Mike Clark, Vice Chairman, Councillors Nicola Clark, Councillor Alex Hall, Councillor Colin Matthews, Councillor Mrs. Marianne Overton, and Councillor Robert Parker. Terms of reference were agreed at our inaugural meeting on the 21st of January 2022, and the panel thereafter met 13 times, and that was between January 2022 and March 2023. A series of site visits and thematic sessions were conducted throughout the duration of this review. The areas explored by this review included engagement with subject matter experts, mental health provision, agricultural businesses, opportunities for going green through our Green Master Plan, connectivity across rural Lincolnshire, the UK Food Valley, county farms, technological innovations and robotics, and labour supply, careers and succession. On behalf of the panel, I would like to thank all key contributors to the review. These were professionals in the field, subject matter expert consultants, academics, leading officers, and charitable organisation leads. Without their expert testimonies, their valued contributions, and sheer interest in this review wouldn't have been possible to complete. I would like now to introduce Councillor Gary Taylor, Chairman of the panel, who will present the report and its findings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chiara. Gary, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chiara, for that. So good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Committee. Thank you very much for the effort that's gone into this report by the committee and also for officers. Thank you for Chiara for your work and effort, and also Vanessa. There's some certainly some effort and time has gone into this over the past period. You can see by this report, it's a very comprehensive document we have here today. Also, thank you to Mike Clark, Vice Chairman of this panel, for your enthusiasm and all your efforts on this work. I'll now take a few minutes to summarise the work we have done over the past 14 months, including how we built our knowledge around key themes and how we have come to our conclusions for these recommendations. As it's been said, we started in early 2022 with the aim to examine the agricultural sector and find gaps in service provision, look at skills and training required for a fulfilling life and career in this industry, the changing nature of agriculture, particularly in Lincolnshire, and how a county council can support this important sector. Because the theme going through this is that word support. It is supports that word on the front page of the document, and throughout all our meetings we have focused on how we can offer support. On this journey, we considered a plethora of evidence ranging from national policies, interviews with key stakeholders, roundtable discussions and site visits. As we know, Lincolnshire is one of the UK's most diverse farming counties, with a unique blend of farming businesses that range from smaller tenant farms to large multinational corporations, with a total farmed area of about 490,000 hectares. Also, we have our county farm estate, which comprises of 6,675 hectares, and they are the home of our tenant farmers. In supporting this, we have our own trading standards officers, and they are striving to support this sector by keeping our farming communities well informed and promote the benefits of our farming industry. As a panel, we believe that the County Council should contribute to the development of our farming communities by reinstating the Champion Farmed Environment Scheme. We also believe in working in partnership with our local partners, including Lincolnshire Enterprise Partnership, Environment Agency, Anglian Water and Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust. We can offer those resources and opportunities to farmers to engage with different practices, and this would increase networking and cooperation amongst the farming businesses. We also discussed and debated the national situation, the uncertainty, challenges around immigration and at times the labour supply shortages. The government has recently announced some flexibility regarding providing visas for seasonal workers in the agricultural sector. We do need to avoid a situation where we see rotten crops in the fields and food being wasted. We discussed the connection between the County Council and other council departments, such as education and employment opportunities for local people and local economically inactive people. We do need to move away from this industry being a low-wage, low-skill economy to a more high-wage, high-skill economy by retraining and reskilling when this is necessary. We recommend that the County Council is represented on the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust Biodiversity Net Gain Task and Finish Group and seeks opportunities to lead and facilitate on this delivery. We discussed in detail the Green Master Plan and its aspirations. We recommend the greater use of water capture and storage. As last summer we saw within a few days, the industry suffered both drought conditions and then also flooding. We also feel that Lincolnshire needs a forum for agriculture and horticulture, which will be the golden thread of partnership across the public sector and the farming, horticulture and food sectors. We recommend that the Greater Lincolnshire Forum for Agriculture and Horticulture is established with a purpose to support this sector and become more sustainable. We focus on skills and training. We met at Bishop Burton College at the University of Lincoln Ricehome campus. It has over 500 students and over 200 apprenticeships. As a panel, we agreed that the key for future development lies with investment in our young farmers, ensuring that they have the tools, training and confidence to allow them to make a successful career in this industry. We also commissioned the filming of 6 short videos where young farmers gave a positive presentation of their experience in this industry. I would now like to personally thank those young farmers at Top Heart Charles, Riley, Oliver, Dan, Anise and Will for taking part and letting us see the day-to-day lives of young farmers in Lincolnshire. And these videos have also been made available on social media sites. We discussed robotics. There was various discussions regarding of technological developments, and as a challenge keeping up with developments, broadband and connectivity challenges were also debated and discussed. In some of our earlier meetings, we discussed the situation in the industry following the COVID pandemic. Social isolation and mental health and physical health concerns were focused on, and the problems created in silo working during the pandemic. Rural crime and hair coursing and attacks on farms were issues adding to increased stress and levels of anxiety. We heard how nationally over 1/3 of the farming communities suffer from depression, and a further 30 to 36% of the community have a low mental health and well-being. The Lincolnshire Rural Support Network reported to the panel about their work and support they provide, and we also made effort to communicate that support. We believe Lincolnshire is at the top of the ladder in food production, also a great corridor for the nationwide distribution of goods. We also spoke about Lincolnshire being allowed a voice on a national level. As you can see on this report, pages 81 to 86, you'll find agricultural services and organisations that we identified which could provide an opportunity to engage with parliamentary groups and organisations such as the Rural Support Network. From Lincolnshire County Council, Councillor Mark Whittington is our representative, and also I am also the rep on behalf of South Holland District Council. And earlier this month, Town Downing Street hosted a UK Farm Summit. It was named Farm to Fork Summit, and their recommendations have also recently been published, which will also demonstrate, since we produced their draft recommendations and their final report, is an ever-changing industry with developments taking place all the time. We also recommend that the County Council seeks ways to takes on membership of local, regional and encourage MPs to continue to fight to enhance their services, such as broadband provision and future investment to our road network. In conclusion, we are aware that the picture in this report presents many challenges in a changing industry. Yet what stands out is Lincolnshire is at its heart is an agricultural county. Our farmers from owning land to our tenants, our seasonal labourers to the highly skilled scientists developing those vital links, that chain must not be broken. Our recommendations bear the best interest for all the industry. I hope the efforts and the work of this panel will be conveyed in the meaningful outcomes and will be supported where we can support this sector. We'll always need agriculture. The work done in agriculture today passes on to something for those tomorrow. Whether you're working on the latest technology and research or continuing a long family tradition, agriculture leaves a legacy like no other. And with these recommendations, Lincolnshire's agricultural sector has the opportunity to make a positive difference in an ever-changing environment. That's my presentation here today. We also have Mike Clark here, the Vice Chairman. I'll hand to Mike for some his comments and opinions on this review we took place, and then over, of course, to other comments and the debate can take place. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Clark.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This has been a very educational experience working on this panel. I never knew so much activity went on within the county. I've learned so much about the farming business. There are difficulties to overcome, yes, but there are many more opportunities going forward for the whole sector, and hopefully with some government backing we would progress and make this even better within our farming community. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Before we turn to questions, we do have senior officers with us present this morning. Do they have anything that they wish to add at this point? I'm seeing a shaking of heads, so we will firstly thank both councillors for that. I think to summarise 223 pages of a report is a bit of a challenge. It's the kind of thing that used to be set at A-level and we'd all dread it. So very well done on that summary. And I think before we go any further, we should, as a committee, thank all of those who took part in the process of producing this extremely thought-provoking and very substantial piece of work. A great deal of work has evidently gone into it from members, from witnesses, and of course from the officers in support. And I think that is reflected in the quality of the report. So, I'd now like to invite members of the committee to make any relevant statements or ask any questions. And I'm seeing Councillor Spratt.
Pardon me. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. Can I say what a thorough, indeed very comprehensive report that's been published, very detailed, and some very significant conclusions. And if I may make a few comments, and followed by a question possibly for debate. Whilst the report as a whole is excellent, of course, there are 2 points I want to raise particularly, one on the mental health issue and the other in terms of labour shortages. I know when my good friend Councillor Wotton was the previous chair of this committee, mental health was brought up as an issue, and I think it was very important that Councillor Wotton at the time, in terms of the farming community, kept this as an issue at the forefront of this topic when 1 or 2 councillors were rather disparaging of the fact that farming communities and individuals within the communities can often suffer mental health issues as a result of the pressures they were under through various things, reform to funding and such like. So I was very, very pleased that this was kept to the forefront, and I know we had a very powerful presentation from the Farming Community Network. So I just wanted to make that as a comment on that one. The other point I want to make a comment on, and perhaps also question officers on, is the idea of labour shortages. Now, we do know that there are labour shortages, particularly as the report correctly indicates in picking, in terms, for example, potatoes and things of that nature, and flowers and such like. The idea of allowing foreign workers in, I haven't necessarily got an objection to in principle, but somewhere along the line, politicians need to square the circle between those politicians who want to limit immigration or stop it altogether, and those in a particular industry that want to have more immigration. And it is important to try and square the circle here. The thing is, when people come in, it could be argued that farmers and such are able to employ labour that is cheaper, 20% cheaper in some cases than, if I can say, native workers. What I would like to ask as my question is, why do we think that it's so difficult to get people, British people, people who live here, people who are born here, people who are unemployed, students, why is it so difficult to get people working as farm labourers, particularly in seasonal time? I know I mentioned this some time ago. There was a documentary on Radio 4, so you know it to be true, about students. Many years ago, students used to love working on the fields, in the fields and such like. And now students doing holiday jobs don't want to do that now. They want to use the word in the documentary, they want to do posh jobs during summer holidays. So what can be done to get more people, domestic people, British people, into these roles and these jobs? And that's the final thing I've got to say, you'll be pleased to know, Chairman. But I do, and I want to repeat my congratulations to Councillor Taylor and Councillor Clark on the work they've put in personally, as well as the officers and all the people who provided evidence. Thank you, Chairman. I have nothing else to say, and you'll be pleased to know.
Thank you very much indeed. I'll turn to officers for a reply to that, but I have to say I wonder if the answer to your question about why more people don't want to join the agricultural sector, the answer could be go out and try picking onions at 5 o'clock of a February morning. And there is, I'm afraid, the answer. But I'm going to turn to Vanessa Strange. Vanessa, can you enlighten us?
Thank you. I think I would just reflect on some of the conversations we heard from expert witnesses, particularly from officers from the NFU, from a number of consultants we spoke to who work in this area. And recognising that challenge, there were two things that we heard, one of which was around the seasonal workers permits and the need for businesses to be able to plan in a long-term way, so not just year by year. And I think that message is being heard more nationally so that businesses are able to plan their labour supply over a period of time. The other thing we heard really strongly is that young people in Lincolnshire and everywhere want exciting careers, don't they? And so certainly when we went to Bishop Burton, when we went to Rise Home, we saw the opportunities in agriculture, and that was linked to things like automation and technology. And I think we all recognise that there are many jobs in farming that are not going to be automated. There's also lots of opportunities where there are higher skilled jobs where we can encourage young people to see farming as a really exciting career for the future, so that it isn't just a stopgap while you're at university. It's actually something you want to do for the rest of your life. And I think members and officers were all really impressed with what we heard at the college and at the university, but also when we spoke to young farmers as well, they had a very powerful voice. And I would recommend anyone to look at the videos that are online if you haven't had the opportunity yet. There are some quite inspiring young people. So I would reflect that amongst the difficulties, there are also some really exciting messages as well. So a mixed picture, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Just reflecting on the young farmers comment, I'll come back to Hilton in a second to make sure that was the answer he was looking for. But the work done by young farmers, it's often thought to be just a disco. In my division, the Harmston young farmers are actually the Young Farmers Club of the Year, certainly for Lincolnshire. They do an enormous amount of work, and going back to the point that Hilton made about mental health, which I think is a point very well made indeed, and I was pleased to see it covered in the report in detail and with seriousness. Farming is a very, very lonely occupation in many ways. You're alone in that tractor. You're faced with the challenges of running a business with fairly limited support, and there are all sorts of myths out there about billionaire grain barons and all the rest of it, but you're effectively running a business under currently very challenging circumstances indeed. And I think making sure that our farming community, whether they are running a farm or working on a farm, have access to the support that we all need from time to time is extremely important. Next, we move to Councillor Skinner. Councillor Skinner, your questions, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm just a substitute here, but I've read the report. I'm a chartered engineer through the Institute of Agricultural Engineers, so I probably know a little bit about some of this. Indeed, the Llama Show, which is the largest machinery show in England, now based at the NEC, started its life at Lincolnshire Showground, moving on to Newark, then Peterborough. I've actually judged the Institute's prize for innovation and sustainability. Lots of real good stuff in here, and the bits on mental health. Husband and wife farm can be 2,000 acres, and that's just two people in 2,000 acres. Quite lonely out there. And then in a business where it's almost like playing future markets, because you don't know whether that crop's going to grow 100%. Water's mentioned in this report. I was trying to find one other thing amongst it that for me is an important thing. It's soil health, because soil health you can define as capacity of the soil to function as a vital living ecosystem. I would have thought that that's one of the prime things that probably ought to get a mention in there. As an engineer, Engineering UK have just commissioned a report. It's been out this last couple of weeks. It's saying that there's going to be 25% growth in the engineering sector. Actually, agricultural engineers forget about the traditional, something that's hot, bent and battered. We've not been like that for probably the last 40 years. It's high tech, it's engineering things at a cost, and the skills are really, really highly sought. So that's something else that probably we could flag wave a little bit more about. But it is a real good report, really welcome. Congratulations to the officers and everybody taking part. Thank you, Chairman.
I wonder whether any of our officers would like to comment, particularly on that point about soil health, which is an interesting one. Much of the Grade 1 agricultural land in our county is peat on clay, as is much of the best Grade 2. And that has been eroding merrily for 150 years, and in some places you're down to the last metre or so before you get down to the boulder clay. So the long-term future of soil health, point raised, which I think is perhaps something which should be included in our comments to the executive. But I wonder whether either of our officers would like to comment on that. Vanessa?
Try again. Soil health was covered in the discussion along with wider environmental impacts and linking to the Green Master Plan. One of the things that I would reflect on during our discussions is quite how many service areas across Lincolnshire County Council are touched or touch the agricultural community. So colleagues in environment, but also county farms who work obviously really closely with our tenants. What can we do to help in terms of that whole skills agenda and change in practice around issues like soil health? Were issues that perhaps we touched the surface on. To be fair, in 13 meetings we could have kept going for perhaps another 13 and another 13 after that, but they were certainly recognised as being important and something we will reflect on as we work through the action plans. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that. I'll move now to Councillor Griggs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's just to come back on a couple of points that Councillor Spratt raised and one sort of query. I hope I'm misreading it, or I may not be, about some of the figures in the report. So just to pick up on what Councillor Spratt said about why can't we encourage younger people to go work in the fields. Based on my experience of older brothers working in fields during school holidays, family growing up working on the land, I would argue it's wage compression. Early 90s you could earn about twice as much as you can now if you were good at your job. Most land work jobs were piecework, and if you were really good you'd get paid significant sums of money, because as we all know it's not a particularly easy job. It is very hard work, and whilst it might not be too bad during the summer, the horrible depths of winter is definitely not a nice time to be doing it. And I think that's part of the problem is, as wages have gone up nationally in all other lines of work, obviously the reward or the envisaged reward for doing that job has diminished significantly. I don't know what the answer is, because obviously if you turn around and say you've got to pay more, obviously that creates inflation in terms of the cost of our food. Not only that, but it makes automation a viable alternative and therefore reduces the job availability in the long run. So I don't know what the answer is, but I would envisage that that's a lot of the reason that we have the issues with getting younger people out onto the land. Just a query in terms of the table 1 on page 64. It's the Lincolnshire County Council Area Food Chain Employment table. Am I right in thinking that's saying that 10 people in Boston work in fishing? Because that figure seems awfully low, considering I know more than 10 fishermen that live in Boston and fish out of Boston. Obviously, I don't know how the data was collected, but what looking at that said to me was, obviously, first insight was that's quite a lot of people who work in the food chain in Lincolnshire. And then when looking through the figures, I went, that's what I would imagine a massive underestimation. I appreciate that's only one sector, but food manufacturing 1820 doesn't seem right. And again, I could be miles off the mark, So obviously that says that it's probably far higher than what that table says, and therefore even more prevalent that we manage to ensure we can fill the jobs that are available. Thank you very much.
In picking up, excuse me, in picking up on Councillor Griggs' question, could you address whether the source is the only source available for those figures?
It does look low, doesn't it? So we shall go away and investigate that a little bit further.
Yes, thank you for that. And next we have Councillor... Oh, I beg your pardon, Councillor Clark, did you want to come back on that one?
Thank you, Chairman. Regarding your question about the fish people, I queried that when we were reading the report, and the answer I got, in fact, it's not people working within the fish industry up in the Grimsby area. It's individuals who have small fish farms and creating, I can't remember the terminology that was quoted, but they're just at the lower end of the market creating items or breeding for fish farms. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Austin. And I should say to Councillor Austin, welcome back to this committee after an absence of, what, I think 2 years while you were doing Chairman and Vice Chairman duties, Deputy Chairman duties.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's good to be back. I do apologise, though. I'm not as well prepared for this meeting as I would have liked. But there's various things that I felt I had to comment on. I do not have any prejudicial interest. My husband, now aged 86, worked in the agricultural advisory business, but I think now at his current age, I can say we have no interest. Thank you. But, of course, I was living with, from every day, his comments on his work, what I learned. And my only personal experience was looking down a microscope for pea moth and PCN, doing that sort of work, potato cyst, nematodes. Right. A lot of comments. One, and that is with Councillor Spratt. Why did we use, or do we use, why did we start using foreign labour? It was the work ethic. As simple as that. Someone running a farm, whether it is harvesting of seasonal fruit, which I query in this area, it might be brassicas more likely, but or potatoes, whatever it is, you need a labour force that you can rely on, that will come every morning at the specified time, probably brought in a gang van from somewhere, and will work the whole day, not skive off part way through and hide behind a tree, that sort of thing. And, you know, this is the experience that was being, you know, this was the experience that my husband was having in various places. Farms, they could have been down in the Malton Chapel area, they could have been on Holbeach Marsh. It's, you know, it is something that, from experience, he found was why the best gangs tended not to be our homegrown ones in those days. And, you know, it's no good to say, oh, well, I went out last night and I've got a hangover now, or my kid kept me up all night. Most women know that is one of those things. It doesn't stop you from going to do your teaching the next morning. Right, so it's the work ethic. The next thing, yeah, I would have preferred paper, but I've had to scribble comments here, there, and everywhere. Thank you. Right. So it's not the cost of labour, it's the reliability. Secondly, I took issue, I'm sorry, with the role of LCC farms. It's not there, surely, to maximise rents, to get more rent to put in, you know, to get more money to put into LCC services. is there, isn't it? I'm speculating, for two reasons. One, to give some people who don't have a farm but the chance to get on the agricultural ladder by taking on a tenancy, or also by demonstrating perhaps, you know, what good farming should be, but not just to get as much rent out of them as possible. I deplore that. You know, if that's what we think our farmers are doing, then, you know, I want to ask a question seriously about that. Another question, do trading standards have the expertise that is required in this report? You know, please bear in mind, I haven't read this as fully as I would have liked. And one other comment, there was talk about rural broadband. We were talking about that when I was last on this committee. You know, please, what are we doing about that? Right, that's my comments, Chairman, and I can be shot down now quite happily.
I'm sure nobody will be shooting at you, Councillor, but thank you very much for raising those points. I should say to you, and indeed to all members, I'm sure that all the points that are being made are being captured, and those will be passed to the Executive Board. Who's going to pick up Councillor Austin's? Is it going to be Vanessa again? It is going to be Vanessa again. Over to you.
In response to a few of those, I think we did hear when we talked about county farms that passion from members about creating opportunities. We certainly heard from the team about how they looked for particularly young people coming forward into taking on tenancies, and the difference that made really to the demographic. I think there's a desire amongst the team who look after county farms in corporate property to move that further forward and see more innovation in that space. So if the report reads that it was all about the bottom line, then apologies, Councillor Austin. I don't think that was our intent. It was very much that there is, it's part of the dynamic, isn't it? They provide a revenue for the authority, and it's an important thing for us to consider. I think demonstrator farms more broadly is something that we did hear about as well, and that demonstration aspect has certainly fallen away from perhaps where we were 20 years ago nationally. Perhaps the changes to the funding offer now available for farmers might give some opportunities in that space. So there's encouragement for people to collaborate more, to learn from each other. And that is certainly part of the agriculture bill. So how we then help make the aspirations of that bill happen locally is interesting, and whether we have a role either directly or through our land agents in helping our tenants to take that forward is something for us to think about as well. Moving on to the trading standards comment, I don't think we had any concerns raised at our sessions that there weren't the skills available. We certainly heard how busy colleagues are in trading standards, not least because of the pressures that have come about due to avian flu. And the additional time that takes for staff within trading standards. But difficulty around skills was not something that was raised at that session. And then finally, in terms of rural broadband, a huge amount happening in that space, so actually really exciting. I think what we heard from businesses about was actually the need for technology, sometimes at sort of 5G type aspirations, because of just the shift in the work that's done. So things like identifying weeds in the field that are just then dealt with individually, or about automation of picking. So thousands of pictures being taken of a single fruit as it develops and it grows, perhaps if we're thinking about strawberry farms, other things like that. So it was about understanding that movement in that space and making sure we prioritise rural as well as urban, I think, and making sure that remains there. And worth saying that as a strategic authority pushing policy nationally and regionally, agri-food and UK Food Valley is a priority for us, and it is a priority sector. So that light is shone upon the sector constantly when we talk to civil servants and others about what is unique about Lincolnshire and what our needs are. So I hope that covers some of the things that you raised.
Thank you very much. Councillor Austin, you want to come back briefly, please?
Sorry, I know it's very bad practice to come back, but something Vanessa said just reminded me of, as I said, I'd come very quickly, you know, very unprepared to this, really. The comment about drones going up. I told Richard, my husband, about that. That is a fantastic improvement. Back in, well, he sold his business in 2001, but up till then, he was having to, he appreciated or he understood that you could see from air where there were bad patches in crops, and he would have to get a local farmer or somebody with a plane from Fenland Airfield to go up, and he would look at the fields that he was managing. So now a drone would have done that for him. So that's great. That's a really great improvement.
Thank you very much for that contribution. We're going to go very briefly for another comment from Councillor Spratt and then to Councillor Linda Wootton.
Thank you, Chairman. Of course, I'm not in a position to dispute anything Councillor Austin's husband and his experiences are about. But for goodness sake, she paints a damning indictment of British workers.
Moving on, Councillor Linda Wootton.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I think the Scrutiny Panel B should be congratulated on this brilliant piece of work, and also the officers that scoped it out. It gives us so much information, and as Councillor Clark said, Vice Chair, he's learned so much about agriculture. And reading the document, I've learned so much too, and I think we should be really proud of our county, and I think we do it all. It really is a brilliant piece of work, and I really do congratulate everyone involved with it. Excuse me. My question is on mental health. It says in the report that they've worked with the Lincolnshire Foundation NHS Trust, and as we all know, those that need it most are probably least likely to ask for help and advice. So how is the message getting out there to the farming community? Because in some areas, people have like champions of mental health. How are we helping with mental health? Thank you, Chairman. Also, my colleague over there, Mrs. Austin, she brought up about trading standards, and it says in the document that 117 officer days were taken away or used up because of the extra work they had to do because of avian flu. And sadly, other things could crop up, like foot and mouth, God forbid. So it says in the report the Champion Farmed Environment Scheme to be reinstated. Could you just tell us a little bit about that? And that's me done. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Who's going to pick up the responses? It's Vanessa again. Thank you.
Thank you for those. Firstly, on the mental health discussion, I think what we've learned over the years as a committee actually is the important way that local third sector organisations work directly with the farming community. In particular, we frequently heard from the Lincolnshire Rural Support Network, but there are others out there as well, who have had much more success by being in the places where farmers are, if that makes sense. So whether that's perhaps at the Lincolnshire Show or at farming events or at local markets, and gently talking to people, and whether that's about mental health or whether that's about their physical health as well. So should you wish to, you can go and see LRSN at the Lincolnshire Show this year and have your blood pressure taken and your weight taken, etc., and have a health check while you're there. But it is also talking to people about their whole health and well-being, and starting to have those conversations with individuals and with families as well. And that can be at those really early entry points. They also support families and individuals in more crisis situations as well. So certainly some of the stories that we heard when we met with them were very powerful. But there was hope there as well, that there was a lot of early intervention. And some members of this committee will remember that I think 4 years ago now, we were able to help to find some funding to secure a mental health nurse to work as part of the LRSN team. And the nurse is still in post and seeing clients on a very regular basis. So lots there that we can see in terms of the work that we've done and supported, and the work that other organisations do. In terms of the farmed environment work, that was part of our conversation that really focused on the transition that farmers are going through at the moment in terms of the agriculture bill and the changes to environmental schemes, and thinking about how we can take a role within Lincolnshire to promote that to the farming community and help see those changes. So that was one of our recommendations, to really push that forward as a priority.
Thank you very much. Did you want to add to that, Councillor Taylor, before we turn to Councillor Baxter?
No, I wish to speak at the end, if that's fine, Chairman.
We'll come back to you. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this is really good, and I echo the comments to congratulate Scrutiny Panel B on what they've done. It's fitting that the county that gave the nation the Archers should continue to take an interest in the rural folk and rural matters. There's a lot in here about farm labour and some interesting comments made. I'm pleased that the report has directly addressed the issue of the impact of Brexit, and has not said all the problems are solved, nor have all the problems gone away. But there is a hangover from the changes to the changes caused by Brexit. It mentions new migration routes. I'm interested in what those new migration routes are, and how they specifically affect the availability of labour in Lincolnshire. It was interesting to read that most of the visas for working on the land appear to have been awarded to people from either Ukraine, Russia or Belarus, which is at least interesting. My daughter, if we're going to talk about our own kind of anecdotal experience, my daughter is employed as an apprentice at a farm machinery, agricultural machinery manufacturer, and so I'm aware that is a big industry, not just in Lincolnshire, but my daughter is likely to leave Lincolnshire to go off to universities and study engineering elsewhere. Well done her, but I don't think people realise the number of opportunities that farming and agriculture has for manufacturing engineering. There are loads, but we don't present ourselves as a glamorous industry. Agriculture is not presented either, whether it's picking fruit or designing drones. We don't present ourselves as glamorous as we could, and that may be part of the problem. Finally, I wanted to ask about anaerobic digestion, and it might be on page 98, but I might be missing it. The report says that there are currently 32 anaerobic digestive sites, though only 2 provide biomethane into the national grid. I don't understand how biomethane is put into the national grid? Are we talking about a biomethane generator going into the national grid? And anyway, why are there only 2 in a county that must have must certainly have more agricultural waste than most of the other counties? Why are we not doing more with agricultural waste in order to generate power? Thank you.
In turning to officers for that, and I could answer your last question, but I won't because I might get it wrong. Could I just pick up on the point that Councillor Baxter made about his daughter leaving to study engineering elsewhere, and that's absolutely fine, and we wish her well. I'm just curious to know whether there is a possibility of, given the amount of innovation work which is being done within the county, and particularly in the southeast of the county, on agricultural machinery and technological innovation, whether there is an opportunity to work with our local university, and whether we've done anything with our local university to try and stimulate perhaps a more specialised course in engineering as applicable to agriculture. But you have 3 questions from Councillor Baxter, so I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. Taking your first question around availability of workers, I did comment earlier on the seasonal workers permits, and that seems to be the big push at the moment in terms of national policy. I think we heard from sort of consultants and from the NFU and others about the importance of flexible labour and the importance of sharing with government the role that Labour plays within the whole farm to fork world. And so I'm sure people were pleased to see the event that took place at Downing Street and the renewed interest in that whole food production issue. I'm sure that the Prime Minister and others were hearing from the sector how important labour is as part of the picture, along with automation, along with robotics. In terms of detail of that, if Councillor Baxter would like to talk to me further afterwards, I shall try and find out some more information for you. That's probably all I have at this point. In terms of careers, again, that was something that the panel were particularly interested in when we talked to the college and to the university. That whole innovation piece is clearly really exciting for the whole of Greater Lincolnshire. I think we can always learn from other areas, and probably controversial to say in Lincolnshire, looking at what they've been doing in Yorkshire this weekend, but I did spot up at Driffield, I think it was, they got what looked like a great careers event, really focusing on that kind of food, farming, production, bringing in agricultural engineers through to farmers to say, look at the careers that we have. And we do a great job of that in Lincolnshire. Perhaps we could do more around food and farming in that space, and that might be something that we pick up through the action plans. I think I'm right in saying that we will be taking work forward after this report has been to the executive. And so there's lots still to do, I'm sure, in terms of reporting back as officers and where you direct us going forward. In terms of anaerobic digestion, obviously there are lots of anaerobic digestion happening across Lincolnshire. I think there are challenges sometimes in how the energy can be used more widely than just on site. And that's a related piece of work that's happening very much within the County Council at the moment to understand energy better and what energy opportunities might be going forward. So perhaps that's something that we'll hear more about in committee in future months. Again, happy to talk to Councillor Baxter outside of the meeting, although the chairman might have other thoughts as well.
No, I think it clearly does tie into that wider energy report. I know that having dealt with a number of these things in a professional capacity, one of the problems is, are you close to the gas grid? And is the grid at that point capable of taking biomethane being put into it in a certain proportion, where not, people have historically in more isolated sites simply gone down the route of generating electricity actually on site, but they are using the material. Whether it is always waste is, of course, a different matter. Electricity as a crop is something which is grown very widely around Lincolnshire, and a very, very large acreage of dedicated feedstock is grown, not for the table or indeed for cattle feed, but specifically for the purpose of feeding into anaerobic digesters. And there are some very big ones around, but it isn't always practical to feed it into a gas main, because there isn't always a gas main where you want to build your anaerobic digester. But you raise a good point, and I think it's one that cross-references into that wider study of energy that you were referring to earlier, Councillor Baxter, and it needs to be addressed. We need more joined-up thinking in all forms of energy, and hopefully that's one of the things that will do. I'm going to raise a couple of points myself, and then we're probably going to move on. I will come back to Councillor Skinner, but I'm going to have my go now, because I'm the chairman and I'm allowed to. One of the themes that really comes out of this enormously strongly and I repeat other people's congratulations, a very powerful report and a very valuable report, is the importance, if I can summarise a lot of those themes, of adding value to what we do in agriculture. And that clearly involves technological evolution. I won't say revolution, but certainly evolution on quite a major scale. So my first question is, when we come down to the level of individual farming enterprises, and I'm not talking here about the very, very large ones. Clearly, Dyson's beeswax operation has access to funds, it has access to expertise, but that is not necessarily typical of every farmer. How confident are you, looking at the need to evolve technically, that individual farming enterprises have sufficient access to capital to allow them to do that, and indeed to knowledge, so that they can understand what technical evolution may be available to them?
One of the biggest challenges that some of our farmers will have is the access to capital. The new funding opportunities are there, include capital support. However, businesses will have to pay for the capital investment first and claim it in arrears, which is standard practice, however, is quite challenging for some businesses. The availability of expertise and advice is there in a number of forms, one of which is the sort of shared learning that I referenced earlier, in terms of encouraging farmers to learn from their neighbours and learn from local groups, and they are incentivised to do so. Obviously, land agents and agricultural consultants, agronomists and others are there providing a service too, and there are lots of people promoting those opportunities. Finally, I would reference again organisations such as LRSN and some land agents as well, who have taken on contracts from DEFRA to offer free advice sessions to businesses. And they can be covering topics such as new farming policy, through to things like succession that we also talked about through the work that we've done. But it's certainly a challenge. It is one that's been recognised over a period of years, that to get businesses to innovate and to invest when you are needing to claim funding in arrears can be a challenge. The thing that is being pushed for nationally is that those systems are at least efficient and pay on time, where there has historically been some difficulties as well from Natural England and the Rural Payments Agency. I think nationally well documented. I think there has been priority given to that area now, and things are anecdotally improving, and payment windows are now every 6 months as opposed to annually, which also helps businesses in terms of moving money forward and cash flow. So I hope that helps.
It certainly does, and I'm sure we'll capture those points for the executive, because I think going forward that's a very important area. My last question actually relates to it. In introducing this topic, we heard from Councillor Taylor and from our officers that the subject of Panel B's research was into what support the County Council could give. What becomes very, very clear from the report is that we are talking about multiple agencies being involved at all levels, be it ourselves, be it DEFRA, be it the Environment Agency, be it in planning sense, our colleagues at District, all sorts of different bodies. So my question really is, are you satisfied that we have coordination in the way that all of these different entities are available to serve individual farming enterprises? And is there anything this council can do to help coordinate that?
I think you're right. It was a challenge that the panel considered at significant length, and there was much discussion over things like, did we have a role in terms of sharing that information, becoming a hub for that information? And actually, I think members came to the conclusion that there were lots of bodies already there trying to do that work, and simply to create perhaps another website or another media presence wasn't the right way forward. I should have mentioned the work that our Growth Hub team do in supporting all businesses, but also within this space. And it is organisations like that who can really link people together. I suspect farmers would end up going through a number of doors for this advice or information, and whether it's that they spot something in the back of the Farmers Weekly or something that's on Facebook, or they speak to their agronomist and they get pointed in the right direction. There isn't going to be one route to it. I'm sure that councillors themselves are often also that point of contact for people and where to go. I'm sure we do have a role within that, but panel members were not convinced that setting up another sort of door was the way forward at this time for proliferation of information almost. Also recognising quite how much stuff there is online, particularly post-COVID. There are so many webinars that people can tap into and information points too. So I think our role probably is through the Growth Hub and other points of contact, if that helps.
Thank you very much indeed for that. I'm going to go to Councillor Skinner first, who has been waiting very patiently to come back, and then to Councillor Wotton. Councillor Skinner.
Thank you very much for indulging me, Chairman. The comments made by Councillor Austin and Councillor Spratt reminded me how important data is to farming. I attended a CPD event last month, and it's a robotics company developing scanning a field down to plant level in 20 hectares, and we're looking at about a terabyte of data. So that's how important, and that not only from that program, they can actually, from the agronomy side, they can 65% predict how good each plant's going to be on 20 hectares. It kind of blows the mind a little bit, but on top of that, crop mapping, where your machinery can alter its seeding rate and its fertiliser rate to respond to the productivity of each individual area. That shows how important it is to roll out, decent broadband all over the county. It really does put the pressure. Anecdotally, I'll comment, I was in New Zealand 5 years ago, and a place called Levin. I visited a number of pack houses. One pack house had 23 nationalities working in it. So we have a worldwide competition for that labour, for people producing that. And then, final question, Chairman, with land being a finite resource and the pressure from energy crops, from solar, etc., what are we doing to maximise the growing space beneath the solar, the vertical space in vertical growing, etc., because that's something I'm not found, and I've been reading very hard. Thank you, Chairman.
Vanessa, would you like to come back to that before we go to Councillor Wotton?
Indeed. Perhaps we didn't touch particularly on capturing the space under solar panels. There is much discussion over things like biodiversity net gain when it comes to using land for energy crops. Whether or not livestock are put around or used in those fields is certainly a topic too. I would encourage members who are interested to look at some of the land use planning framework discussions that are happening at the moment. We're certainly actively involved in those, as is Councillor Davey, in terms of ensuring that the County Council's voice is heard in that space, and making sure that we are conscious about some of the decisions that are made in Lincolnshire, or at least that we promote our views nationally. In terms of the vertical growing, we did hear in the panel a little bit about that, but again, I suspect that could have been 13 sessions in itself, in terms of how much interest there would be in that, in terms of the opportunities going forward that we are yet to probably even understand. We do have some innovative businesses in Lincolnshire looking at that and investing in that at the moment, so I'm sure we will be hearing more going forward.
Yes, when we excuse me, when we capture our points for the executive, I hope that can be raised, because there are, as it were, side effects of energy industry which are already happening within the county, very innovative ones. I'm thinking of, for example, surplus heat. There's a site just growing fruit just south of my division. There's another one associated with what I think was and may still be the biggest anaerobic digester in the county. So good they didn't name it after me, but it is in the village of Carrington, where a very significant fruit growing operation, year-round fruit growing operation, has emerged to use the surplus heat from the operation of biodigestion, which is generating electricity. So there are all sorts of innovative things that could be done, and I think we'll definitely ask for that to be put on the lengthening list of points to go to the executive. Finally, I think in terms of questions, before we come to Councillor Taylor, who wanted to sum up, we have Councillor Ray Wotton. Ray.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to echo colleagues' comments regarding the content of this report. I think it's a very excellent report, and congratulate Councillor Taylor and Councillor Clark and the committee on the work they've put into this report. Councillor Skinner has mentioned what I wanted to say, and that's regarding solar panels. Did the panel find that more land was now being used for solar farms than before? My son works as a nuclear engineer at Sizewell B, and his comments are that we need more solar farms, because otherwise how are all the electric cars going to keep running? But that's his own personal comment. So is more land being used now for solar farms? Thank you.
Vanessa, that's an uncontroversial question for you to pick up.
Yes. Although the panel didn't dive into solar farms as a particular topic, there are more solar farms that we can all see across Lincolnshire, and we are obviously also aware of a large number of applications. As I say, that wasn't something we looked at in great detail within the committee panel.
Thank you very much. Before I move to the proposal, I'm going to come back to Councillor Taylor. Councillor Taylor, you and Councillor Clark have the ringing endorsement of the committee for the hard work that you and your colleagues have done. Would you like to make any final comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's encouraging to hear those positive comments, and also encouraging to hear this committee take this report so very seriously. And as you said, Mr. Chairman, this is about adding value, joint working, multi-agency working. And as Councillor Clark said, he learned a lot from this, and also I did. It's many years since I did work in agriculture, and that was again as a student, and Councillor Griggs makes those comments regarding piecework. And I remember those days. It was actually quite well paid at the time. You work fast, you work hard, you work hard. It was hard working, difficult work, but as Councillor Austin referred to, there's no chance there of skiving, hiding away, because you don't get paid if you do that. So a piecework makes you focus on work. Also develops teamwork, not work ethic. Also, as we've discussed in this meeting today, there is that opportunity to move from that hard work and difficult work in the fields to more high-skilled, more exciting career opportunities. And that's the transition we need to focus on, rather than, as we talked about, importing certain aspects of foreign labour. There are many different types of career opportunity, and Councillor Baxter spoke about the way we present this. So maybe we do need to present better the advantages of working in this agricultural sector, as well as promoting through the media we have. We have the County News magazine and our own social media. We also discussed that in our report. So I'd like to again thank you all taking this very seriously, and your comments again to thank you for Vanessa for answering the detailed questions. And I look forward to seeing our recommendations becoming outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Taylor. We move now to the proposal. It's interesting, isn't it? I can't think of a single industry of the many that there are in Lincolnshire which is more central to both the environment and the economy, the core business of this committee, than agriculture and food. We have an excellent report, as we've heard before us. I'm not going to summarise all the points which have been captured, because we'd be here as long as we've already been here. But what I would say is that in addition to passing those to the Executive Board for consideration, I think the committee would agree with me that it's incredibly important, given the quality of this report, that action comes out of it. The report is very focused, and it looks at future directions of travel in a very helpful way. I think that is something that we should emphasise to the Executive Board. What we want to come out of this is an action plan, so that the various points in whatever timing and sequence is considered appropriate can be addressed. So the proposal is to note and capture and pass on all the points raised in the meeting this morning, to thank Panel B for their efforts, excellent efforts in carrying out this review. And I now move that the committee supports the report and recommendations as summarised on pages 17 to 20 of the report, with the additional points that have been made on the floor this morning. And we request that our comments from the discussion are captured and shared with the Executive for their consideration ahead of taking a decision on the 6th of June 2023. Do I have a seconder? I have seconded. I think Councillor Linda Wootton was just ahead with her hand up first. We will now vote. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? That is happily unanimous. Excellent report. Excellent morning's work by this committee. Well done everyone. Right, we now move on to item 6 on the agenda, and miraculously we are within 2 minutes of being bang on time. That is the Lincolnshire County Council Business Centres and Economic Development Portfolio Performance Report. This scrutiny report is on pages 237 to 240 of the agenda pack. This report provides an update to the committee on the performance of the council's portfolio of business centres and industrial units, including occupancy levels and tenant feedback on the suitability of the council's premises to support the needs of small businesses. The actions before us this morning: the committee is invited to 1. Consider and note the contents of the report, and 2. Comment on the appropriateness of the measures used to review the performance of the council's portfolio of business premises, in particular the feedback provided by our tenants following a detailed engagement exercise and other units of measurements such as occupancy levels and other factors. Simon Wright, Regeneration and Portfolio Manager, Economic Infrastructure, is going to present this report. Over to you, Simon.
Sorry, good start there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that introduction and the opportunity to present this paper to you all this morning. I wanted to start off, if I may please, by just stressing that this paper is very much a supplemental paper, in my view, to the paper that was considered by you all in November, in which you ratified our approach to lettings on our commercial portfolio of premises. And to supplement that paper, we've come back today to provide you with some feedback on the performance of the portfolio in the eyes of our tenants following a very detailed engagement process with them. I think it's important to stress at the outset, if I may, without regurgitating the previous paper in November, that our portfolio and our purpose is very much to support our businesses We fill a role that the private sector cannot fill by offering very flexible lease terms to our property, to our premises, and supporting new businesses and the economic growth of the county. And that is our very sort of the underlying tenet, really, of our reason for being. We carry out lots of engagement with our tenants all the time. On a daily basis, are we speaking to our tenants? So I don't want this to come across as for once we've spoken to our tenants. We do speak to them daily. But what we did do in the first quarter of this year is carry out a range of very structured interviews where we sat down with our tenants and asked them very structured, open-ended questions to find out how they're finding the world in 2023, how our premises might be supporting them, what we could do better, and what we could do more of. And the responses were very enlightening. And I'd like to pull out 4 key themes from that engagement. I've grouped the responses in terms of the accommodation that we offer, our management of the space, the support we give our tenants, and what we could do more of in terms of furthering that support. So in terms of the accommodation, I'm very pleased to say that there was a very strongly overwhelming support that the premises that we offer meet the needs of our tenants. So the incubator style space that we offer is fulfilling a market need there for the economy of Lincolnshire. Our management style also seems to be hitting the mark. We had some very positive responses in terms of the rent levels being appropriate, and also the flexibility of our leases also being particularly favourable to support our tenants' business needs. I do want to give you a balanced report today, and in the interest of that balance, there are some things that we can do better. We have been pulled up by some of our tenants in terms of how we manage our landscaped areas, as an example, and a couple of examples given to us were, for example, litter growing across our estate from neighbouring sites, which is obviously very difficult for us to control, but once it's happened, we need to respond to that quickly. So we've already drawn up an action list of that feedback and have responded in the process of responding to the tenants to say that we've acted on the feedback we've given. There was also a very strong element of what we could do more of to support our tenants, and that was very strongly in terms of providing networking opportunities, business-to-business support, and advertising so that our tenants can promote their business to other tenants in the same location, but also more widely across Lincolnshire. So that's something that we've taken away to develop an action plan to make sure we do that. So that was a very, as I said, a very enlightening experience. We got a lot of very positive feedback from our tenants, and I think it was a lot more engaging than if we'd simply done a mail-out questionnaire, which historically we have done and always received very, very low feedback on. I'd like to just very quickly move on to some other key measures that we have reported in this paper on, and that's mainly around our occupancy levels, which are clearly set out in the paper. I think they are overall very good. There is a split between our industrial units, which are very good, and we do hold some voids in our business centres, which some of that allows us to respond to market conditions very quickly. I think it also reflects 1 or 2 cold spots where demand historically has been low in the portfolio, and I recall mentioning that to this committee in previous meetings. But obviously that's something that we work hard to address. Less tangible, but also successes that I wanted to report to you today are in the wider sense of our work, and that is to draw the attention to the committee of the recent extension of the Aventus Business Centre at Market Deeping, where we've created lots more office space, a very detailed project, a multidisciplinary project, and very pleased to say that's coming to an end. And we've also brought in some changes to how we work, introducing new management software, which will allow us to provide an even better quality of service to our tenants, and how we respond to lease renewals and other key dates and things like that. So, in summary, what I'd like to say is that I think the structured nature of the interviews was very successful to engage with our tenants. We received lots of feedback, overwhelming support for the premises that we offer, and some very complimentary comments about the professionalism and the willingness of our staff to help our tenants, which was very encouraging. There are some things that we will improve on, and we've taken that feedback away, and particularly how we can support our businesses in terms of promotional advertising and business-to-business events, and working with growth hub advisors and other sorts of support of that nature. I think that summarises the paper, Chairman. So again, thank you for your time to allow me to present that this morning, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Simon. I'll come to the floor in just a moment. I think just as a comment, I'm not convinced that everybody understands as well as they could the enormous potential that local government has to help stimulate the private sector. I think this council does it very well. I think there are other councils in Lincolnshire which also do it very well, and some which perhaps could learn from here and other places. We do not fight against the market, we try and complement the market, and I think the role that we can play in stimulating the economy and hence the prosperity of everybody in our county is of enormous strategic significance, and I'm very pleased in the positive nature of this report. Turning to the floor, I have one or two questions I'll put in at the end. Councillor Spratt.
Thank you, Chairman. I think really to follow on from what you've just said as well, which is very important. Also to thank the Officer Simon for another excellent report which we've received on this, and really just to add to what you've said as well as what Simon said. Simon pointed out, he basically said in doing what we're doing in terms of property, the market can't or won't do everything. And I think this is a really good method, a really good way of intervention in the market, as you indicate, Chairman, and the County Council can facilitate this in order to stimulate greater economic growth, and I think that's a very important point that you made. Wouldn't it be nice if we had more money and more powers in terms of economic policy and intervention, so that we could do what we're really good at, even more of it? And you know, there was quite a significant investment made by this county council in local economy. I know it's not directly relevant to this report, but during the COVID pandemic, to keep business and industry going. And if there is ever one argument, and even if it was one argument only, for devolution of power in terms of economic policy, this certainly demonstrates why we should have devolution in terms of economic policy. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that. I wonder if I'm not seeing any other... I beg your pardon, Councillor Austin.
If I may ask a question, please, of... it was Simon, wasn't it? Thank you. I remember certainly visiting Eventus, probably quite some years ago now, and I think we also visited the Skegness one. But I wondered, how much do you see these as, if in many cases, of starter units, if you like, from which businesses then move on to bigger premises, you know, because I see that also you've extended Eventus, haven't you, at Deeping? So, you know, are some companies, some businesses, you know, flourishing so much that they feel they can go it alone, if you like? I'd just be interested to know. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Austin. What I'd like to do, answer that in the context of Market Deeping Eventus as an example. And I think what we've seen there, we've actually seen COVID act as a catalyst in helping some of those bigger businesses move on, actually. So to answer your question very simply, yes. To understand the reasons why that's happened are more complex, but in some cases we have seen the impact of COVID changing working practices. So some of the larger tenants that we had organically grown in our premises suddenly found that they needed less space and they have vacated. So it has been a natural evolution, and that does allow us then to look at reformatting that space to attract smaller businesses. So I think the answer is yes. I think the reasons why that are complex.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Griggs.
Thank you very much. My point kind of covers what all three councillors before me have spoken about, so I won't repeat most of it. But from my point of view, yeah, we could sit there and look and go, if we look at the business centre's 75.5% occupancy rate, is that fantastic, is it not? And then we could delve deeper and go, yeah, as Simon alluded to, that there are areas that are potentially more empty than others. But from my point of view, that's the point of the county council, is to bridge that gap, to provide a crutch for people trying to get out of working from home or, you know, mini garage businesses, and be able to build it up to a point where they're confident enough and have enough expertise and guidance to help them move on, to provide future employment opportunities and future revenue for Lincolnshire as a whole. So, I mean, if it was 30%, don't get me wrong, it'd be a completely different comment. I'd be, yeah, we need to do more. But I think having been in some of the centres, not necessarily ones managed and maintained by the county, but I think they're really useful in local areas to really encourage business. And not only that, generally it tends to be a lot of like-minded people, maybe at different stages throughout the process. So it gives them a good opportunity to network and say, okay, I'm experiencing this issue. How, you know, have you gone through similar? Oh yeah, we did this. So I think in terms of being able to allow businesses and facilitate the market that wouldn't be provided by the market outside of the county council, I think it's imperative that we carry on doing things like this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's a good report, there's some good opportunities there, and thinking of Greater Lincolnshire, that there might be some areas where we can work together, as with the district councils at partnership level, to actually ensure Lincolnshire has a good service covering the whole area. But the report is really good. Thank you.
Yes, I think I would certainly endorse that. I wonder if I can just ask a question going back to a point that Councillor Griggs made about the occupancy rate. We have for industrial and miscellaneous figures in the 90s, and markedly different for business centres at 75%. I wonder whether you could just dig into that a little bit more. Does it imply, on the one hand, that we're doing the right thing because there is, for example, a high churn rate, or does it imply that we have some sites that are perhaps not in the right location? Could you read a little more into that for us, please?
Thank you, Councillor Carrington. Yeah, I think there is a distinction there between the industrial and the business centres. And I think what I should have stressed in presenting those figures, they're expressed in terms of the total lettable area rather than individual units. We prefer to measure the premises in that way. I think from my experience, I would say that the figures are slightly skewed on the business centres, because we do have historically a larger centre in Gainsborough, which again I think might have described that centre to this committee previously. That does historically has always carried more voids than our other centres. I think it also reflects the fact that we've just completed the new hub building at Holbeach. That centre opened in July of last year, and we're very pleased with the level of new tenants that we've got coming into that centre already. But obviously it is a brand new space, and we do carry some voids there, which we're obviously very active in marketing that space, and there is a high level of interest at the moment in that space.
Thank you very much for that. I'm looking around the room to see if there are any further contributions from the floor. I am not seeing any. In that case, thank you very much indeed for the report, and thank you very much indeed for the quality, not merely the quantity, but the quality of engagement with our tenants. absolutely crucial that we do that, and it's very good to see that happening. We will, of course, capture the points made by members this morning. In addition to doing that, I therefore move to the proposal. I move that the report be endorsed, that the committee's satisfaction be recorded on activity undertaken and engaging with our tenants, and request that our comments and suggestions made in relation to the overview of activity we received today are taken under consideration by relevant officers and the executive portfolio holder. Does anyone dissent? If so, please indicate now. I'm seeing no dissent, and thank you. Therefore, that is agreed, and thank you, Simon, for your presentation. Moving on, we move to item 7 on the work programme, I beg your pardon, on the agenda, which is the committee work programme. This item is on pages 241 to 248 of the agenda pack, and it enables the committee to comment on the content of its work programme. It will be presented by Chiara Hagianu, our scrutiny officer, and our actions are to review the work programme and highlight any additional scrutiny activity which could be included for consideration in the work programme. Over to you, Chiara.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As members are aware, the work programme is being reviewed at each meeting to ensure that our future agendas are reflecting of key priorities and add value to the work of the Council and partners. Just to give you a flavour of the next meeting, the committee is scheduled to meet again on the 11th of July, and items to be taken include the Town Centre Improvements Review Report, which is the overview report of outcomes and recommendations of the works of the Scrutiny Panel A, and that will be a pre-decision item, which the decision for which will be taken by the Executive on the 5th of September 2023. We are also going to receive an annual position report on the Adult Skills and Family Learning Programme for 2022-2023, an annual position report on the Growth Hub annual performance for 2022 and future plans for business support initiatives. We shall receive the service level performance report against the performance framework for 2022-2023, which is the Q4 report on economy, flooding and waste. We are going to receive the Horncastle Industrial Estate Extension Report. We will also receive an interim verbal update on the broadband programme, and for information only, we shall consider the energy options analysis for Greater Lincolnshire. And should there be any additional topics for consideration, please do indicate now or get in touch with me offline to discuss the possibility and, as appropriate, to add these on the work programme. And this concludes my update to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chiara. I will now invite members of the committee to comment on the item. Any comments or questions, members? Councillor Griggs.
Yeah, it's just a quick one, not regarding the items on the work programme, but the date of the future meetings. 23rd of October 2023 is a Monday. I'm assuming it should be the 24th of October, or is there a reason it's a Monday? I do apologise.
That is correct. The meeting is scheduled on the 24th of October, so I will amend that.
Lovely.
Thank you.
And Councillor Spratt.
Just very briefly, Chairman, I'm afraid I won't be able to make the next meeting, so please record my apologies now if you would.
We will note those in advance. Thank you. Any further comments from the floor? Seeing none, I move to the proposal. I move that we note the report and approve the existing work programme with the correction already discussed, as detailed on pages 241 to 248. Does anyone dissent? Seeing no dissent, that is therefore agreed. Well, thank you very much indeed, colleagues, members and officers. That concludes the business of the meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance, either here in the chamber or online. And we now conclude at 37 minutes past 11. Thank you very much indeed. The meeting is now closed.